welcome to this afternoon's LinkedIn Live. I'm Laura Hannan from Pitch One to One, and I'm joined today by Peter Nicholls from Voodoo. Peter's going to introduce himself, and just so that I know who's here today, really, are you managing a company page? You're looking to increase your brand following on LinkedIn, so perhaps you're a marketer. How many company page followers do you have at the moment? Or is it something that you haven't yet really started on? Because Peter and I, we could be talking about all sorts of things about increasing your company page following. So if we know really where you guys are at the moment, and also please give us any questions and put the questions into the chat and we'll get to those as soon as we can. So enough from me. Peter, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Laura. So I'm Peter Nicholls. I'm from Voodoo. I'm the CEO there. And we're today in one of our client spaces, actually. So this is Yamaha Music London, the flagship store for Yamaha outside of Japan. And this is our brand new social media space where my team get to record all sorts of fun stuff for Yamaha. So I thought it was an appropriate location for us to do our live from.
And you manage the LinkedIn?
And yes, so actually globally we manage LinkedIn for Yamaha. That page.
Well, I feel really lucky because I've done a few LinkedIn lives now. I've done a few chats, but never an in-person chat live on LinkedIn. So yeah, pretty special day.
Well, this is my first ever LinkedIn live, so we're in good company.
Great. So getting started, let's talk about that. It can be quite a tricky thing, sort of building momentum on your company page in particular. And do you have any sort of tips? What if you really are at the beginning of your LinkedIn company page journey?
Yeah, so we have definitely got a bit of a formula going now with some of the stuff that we've learned with clients, large and small. And one of the big ones for us is definitely about thinking around your audience and the content that you want to start with and the topics that you're going to explore with them. So really understanding that and planning that in advance. It doesn't have to be, for small businesses, that doesn't have to be an over-engineered content plan. But just having an idea of the stuff that you feel really confident about talking to people about, what you believe will be interesting, educational. These are sort of the hot areas for LinkedIn, and definitely innovation is a big topic that for any of our clients, Yamaha, Transporian and others, has been a really hot topic.
Yeah. So innovation as in sort of behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it could be R&D, but it could also be the things that you're learning as a team, as a company, as a brand, just the sort of tips and tricks that you may have for people, even if it's learning the guitar. These are the sorts of things that really resonate with people on LinkedIn in a different way to the other channels.
Yeah. And I think the inviting your connections to follow your company page is quite interesting because you get the credits of 250 a month.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And we get them in all the time, don't we, into our inbox, and the majority probably get declined. They certainly do by me, and we know. So that can be quite challenging getting that kicked off. But if you get people that do agree to follow the company page, then you get that follow account credited. So you do the 250 at the beginning of the month, and then it'll reset itself. You get another 250 at the start of the next month. And so it's probably a good practice to go in a week before that's up and see how many credits you've got and really make the most of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great, I think, for businesses that are properly starting out. So if you're a founder business or a startup, it's a great way to sort of, if you like, benefit from that free organic process to start a company page, rather than spending or thinking that you have to spend large amounts of budget on advertising. It's not always the best way to start, actually.
Yeah. And I've also found that people that know you personally will be more likely to follow your page. You obviously want to have your followers to be as relevant as possible, but it can be a bit of a snowball effect. So even just getting started with people that sort of know you and then you're more then you can be a bit more targeted as you get the followers later.
Yeah, and I think as a community, LinkedIn is far more supporting in that way. So don't be afraid of doing that, because I think you'll be surprised how many people do take you up on the offer initially, because you're always going to pick your 250 favorite friends from LinkedIn, who are much more likely to then follow the page.
Yeah.
I think we've got a question.
Oh, fantastic.
So might have to lean into that one.
Lean into, have a read. Personal following to company much bigger, keen to understand where my own page should fit in as part of my marketing strategy. Currently it doesn't, as well as learn how to advise clients who are mainly tech firms transitioning from startup to scale up, i.e. looking to professionalize their growth function beyond DIY and ad hoc. Thank you, Matt. So I think it's sort of more what you're looking to get out of the session, which is great. But actually an immediate thing that comes to mind is there is a feature on company pages that lets you know which co-workers posts are trending at the moment, and being able to jump onto that momentum and repost a personal page post onto your company page is a really great way. It also can highlight the expertise of your team by saying what they're talking about, and encouraging them to be doing posts.
Yeah, and I think it never hurts for anything from small to medium scale businesses to be supporting their team. So again, it will help with that organic growth of the page if you're showing that interest in what your own team are following and posting about. Yeah.
And I know with you're a business founder or just a couple of people in the business, and you might have limited resource, it can be quite challenging to decide, I've only got a tiny amount of time, do I spend it on my personal profile or my company page profile? We get asked that quite a lot, like where should you be spending your time?
Yeah, I think it's always a tricky balance. So every situation is different. I think on a founder side of things and a startup side of things, concentrate on the individuals first. Make sure you've got that following, make sure you've got that reach first, and then build your company page. But obviously, the more mature that gets, the more you really do need to start putting effort into the company, if you like, the LinkedIn brand page.
Yeah,
that's how I would explain it. It's always called a company page, but actually it's really about your brand at a certain scale.
Yeah. And actually, if you think about the way the features on LinkedIn are, a company can't reach out to an individual to say, hey, follow my page, unless it's through an advertising medium. They come through your personal connection. So LinkedIn has kind of engineered that person first. And then I think you were saying about like the sort of the importance of the brand sort of gets stronger the bigger the company gets.
Yeah, and that definitely, you can see how LinkedIn really does prioritize individuals. So company pages are, I would say, a lot more complicated to grow than your individual profile, and that is absolutely deliberate by LinkedIn. That it's intentional.
Yeah. Are you talking about that it's they might want you to advertise?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think a big part of the conversation, certainly for us now, is the level of investment that you need to put into a company page once you sort of reach that enterprise level, is what I would call it.
Yeah.
So I think once you've left that growth stage and now you're an established brand, the expectation from LinkedIn is you are going to pay for that privilege.
Yeah.
Perhaps not quite as harshly as Meta has made brands invest in that side of things, but LinkedIn does still want to see some investment from a large-scale company to promote itself on its channel, which I think is reasonable.
Yeah, and actually what protects the organic side of things is that they get the majority of their income through Recruiter and Sales Navigator. Yeah. So it's not solely an advertising model, unlike Meta.
Yeah, exactly. You can see there's a bit more spread.
Yeah.
And therefore they're a little bit more generous, I would say. So when you're doing promotional advertising on LinkedIn, the results that you get are, I think, a lot more quality lead level, but also that they have made it so that you're reaching a very large group for that money. So your sort of impression level is higher, but also then your click-through rate is often that much higher than it would be in Meta. So it's
okay.
sort of a quality use of advertising, especially for B2B.
Yeah.
I think it's a very strong network for that. But again, it depends on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
There's still great results out of Facebook for certain business type of promos.
Yeah. So should we talk about trends?
Sure.
Yeah. What are you seeing? What's happening at the moment?
So there's definitely been a shift, I would say, into a benefit from promotional activity and spending advertising money on LinkedIn to boost your organic performance, especially around followers.
Mm-hmm.
So although I think that's always been true for impressions, less so for engagement, for follower growth, it's absolutely a trend that we can see that's growing. But also for us, I know this sounds almost, for many of us in marketing, this feels like a done deal, but the increased use of mobile.
Mm-hmm.
So the other big component for us is that growth in mobile usage. In fact, now I think the latest figure is it's almost top 70% is mobile usage on LinkedIn, which was probably 5 years ago the complete reverse. So it was mainly a desktop tool, and now it's very heavily a mobile tool.
Right. Okay. We've got a question.
Cool.
Have to lean in. Do you think showing more human or people side is helpful on a company page?
Hello, Philip Jackson. Thank you. Yes, I do, and I think we were going to touch on this anyway. But the use of your teams and employees on LinkedIn is a massive benefit to company pages in a way that I think people underestimate. And people really are interested in those employees, and they're interested in those human stories. We have a really good example, I think, with Yamaha, which is about a year ago we did a series on their R&D team, and the engagement for that was as high as the engagement on posts around people like Elton John and Lady Gaga and the Super Bowl. So that they're within LinkedIn, they're kind of level pegging, and that human story is something that LinkedIn people and the LinkedIn community, I think, really are interested in and are prepared to spend time reading about.
So they were looking at their innovation with instruments, and they were more interested in that than the pop stars.
Level pegging, I would say, but it's certainly that there is a huge interest in that sort of behind the scenes interest stories. Is there a celebration? I mean, International Women's Day is a huge topic on LinkedIn. It really resonates with that community, and those interest stories that are specifically about women in business always get very high engagement levels. So I think you do, as a brand, need to not be entirely corporate about your approach to LinkedIn. There does have to be a bit of a human side to it, and there does have to be interest stories about individuals and people in general. It can't just be a product show. That's not going to work. People aren't here to learn all about, although innovation is a hot topic as well, and education. But I think the people make a big difference, and your employees make a very big difference.
And it goes two ways, doesn't it? Because you've got, I think sometimes we're in B2B marketing, we think of the brand, and we do forget that our buyers are not a company, they are people. And that's what it's all about. But also when we put out a company post and we ask all of our colleagues to repost it, which is a very common thing to happen, and a whole load of sort of corporate posts go out, and they tend to, on the individual's feed, they tend to not do particularly well, a reshare on but actually maybe your employees don't have the most relevant network anyway, and by doing that they are actually helping to boost your company posts. So I think that for the last 6 months or so, from our research, we've seen that reposts are more effective than comments even, and it's so much easier for an employee to do that. And so it kind of instinctively you think, oh, don't just throw out that company, like, you know, it doesn't get the engagement, it's not human. It does actually help your company page post. So there is an algorithmic thing there. But I think it's even more important that if you have, say you've got a great video that you've put out as a company, and you know, employees actually will want to repost the more visual stuff that you put out. And so they could repost it, or you could add that video to the recommend to employees part of the company page, which is this like hidden bit that a lot of people haven't really seen yet. It's kind of like a Hootsuite, isn't it? That's built into your LinkedIn company page.
Yes.
And as long as you're a verified employee, when you go onto the company page, you can see these queued up posts, and they're not company page posts, but you click start a post, and then it goes out as an original post, and that will you can put your own perspective on it. You can put most of the text in there, 80%. They can top and tail it or make it their own, but it saves them having to go, oh, how do I add a video onto a post? And the fact it's there, it's ready made, they can just go.
And it really makes a big difference. I think it not only algorithmically does it make a big difference, but you know, just think of it practically. If you have a team of 100 people who happen to share that piece of content, and that it links back to the page or perhaps even the company website, actually by the time they've amplified that through their own networks, perhaps they've maybe got small networks themselves, but you times 100 by 100, you get to reach a very large number of people. So it's a massively powerful tool. As you say, it's a bit hidden. You have to sort of make sure you go and find it.
If you haven't seen it, if you click start a post on your company page and then you get rid of it, your page turns into, you've got your posts, and then you've got a toggle at the top and it says employee advocacy. When you click on that, that's when you can start a post, and it doesn't go out, it just you click recommend, and it sits there pending. Then all you have to do is educate your team to go onto your company page and do it, which you get some stats from that as well. So that's interesting. It actually takes us on to a topic about your strategy and what that strategy could be. Because I think we're sort of getting onto that.
Yeah, for sure.
That sort of conversation. In fact, I've sort of jumping around a bit here, Peter. I'm not keeping to our framework at all. Okay. You'd expect nothing less, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
So what sort of strategy, or how would you recommend somebody goes about, you know, what should your LinkedIn strategy be?
So there are a couple of methods. I think that, again, it really depends where you are in the company scale. But if I sort of start at the what I would call founder level, you know, starting out trying to grow that page, as I said before, content becomes really important, and taking a look at who you're going to be trying to talk to and working out what they're going to be interested in. Remember, it's still on LinkedIn about entertainment at the end of the day, and social media is effectively entertainment channels. So whether that's news or whether that's education or whether that's sharing stories from your team or from the conferences that you've just been to a conference in Barcelona, and we share that on our company page, and actually people were really interested and genuinely wanted to hear how it had gone. So I think it doesn't always have to be that you've had handcrafted pieces of content made for you and some big photo shoot. It doesn't have to be that level. But it is really having an initial think about that content and deciding how that's going to go out, who you're talking to. And sometimes that's a little challenging if you haven't done it before. So we'd always recommend do some research, take a look at brands that you already perhaps follow that you think are really interesting, and have a look at how they structure their posts and the type of topics that they're doing. But also competitors, you know, we can all identify the odd agency that we'd like to be perhaps, or that we feel we are. And they may already have established themselves a bit of a strategy that you can sort of take a look at and learn from. And don't ignore the engagement rates on those posts. You know, companies are always trying to sort of find that engagement rate and level that resonates with people. There's going to be posts that do well, and there's going to be posts that don't. Learn from that as well as you go, and sort of take a look at the stuff that's really resonating with those types of communities, and you can kind of replicate that for yourself. And it's an easy way into this without having to perhaps massively go ahead and figure it out for yourself.
And actually, when you know what's going well, this is where sort of the organic and the paid can really work quite well together. Just what's worked really well for some of our clients is where they've really, rather than thinking of LinkedIn as a standalone channel and a strategy on its own, it's about how can LinkedIn be used to really increase the ROI of other investments. You know, if you're investing in great content, how can you make sure you've got 100,000 eyeballs on that content on LinkedIn? And sort of really digging into that. One thing that's worked really well recently is putting PR, when it's sort of a newsjack type of PR, works really well on LinkedIn, because news sources tend to sort of algorithmically do pretty well. And if you have a really great profile of a spokesperson in PR and you've managed to get an article like that out, and that person puts that out as an original post, not just your company page post that maybe they do a reshare, but you actually put it out through that person. We've seen things like 20,000 organic impressions, and that's been an indicator to go, let's get some paid underneath this. Interestingly, we've not seen as much engagement from that additional, the additional impressions, because the engagement often comes through the network and people that you know, but it's still getting it in front of people.
Sure, and I think this is down to what will work for one company perhaps won't work for another. Mm-hmm. It is a bit of trial and error, for sure. So, for example, on sharing news, for some company pages will do really well, and for others, you have to have first invested in that community, and they have to already be interested in you as a brand before that's going to work and resonate. So, again, we had recently a surprise to us, which was we could take Instagram content, which is really very visual, mainly now video, but very stylized, and utilize some of that on LinkedIn, and it worked. So again, it really is down to the brand. So for some brands that are highly visual and people are expecting that level of look and feel, you can still utilize it even on LinkedIn. That's, I think, a new thing. We've got another message in from Philip Jackson.
What makes clients nervous in terms of LinkedIn?
Oh, that's a good question. I do think there's two key ones, I would say. There is one about getting started. So what does it mean? What am I going to invest? What does that look like in terms of my budget? You know, my social media budget might be already stretched. And is this going to add a large amount of budget to it? It can be true. It depends on what you want to do. But it doesn't have to mean that. You can actually do LinkedIn quite modestly. And then I think the second side of it is, Player Upstairs is really excited right now.
It's incredible. It's almost like they are giving us some background. I don't know whether you can hear that live on LinkedIn, but it sounds incredible.
Amazing. Whoever's playing is really good. But
not making us nervous at all.
No, the beauty of recording in a store that's got live music playing. I think the other thing that makes certainly brands of a certain scale nervous is the customer service side of it. So they're used, I would say, very clearly on things like Facebook and Instagram and now X, to receiving a lot of inbound communication from customers. And we have yet to find a brand that has that same issue on LinkedIn. It's not where people naturally think to come to complain or have an issue or to raise points. It's not to say that it hasn't happened, but the frequency of it is very low. And so that I would always say to them, that is not a major concern for LinkedIn. It is for your other social channels for sure, and you should prepare for it, because being silent in those instances is really damaging. But for LinkedIn, it is much, much less. And if it is on a B2B side of things, I would say that obviously people may raise issues with a brand, but they're more likely to go through somebody's personal profile that they have a connection with in that company than they are to air that on a company page. It doesn't feel as professional, I think, to most people, and so there's not really as much traffic.
Yeah, and also the messaging side of things on a company page is it's brand new, isn't it? I think that a lot of people haven't really discovered that yet. And yeah, that's something to discuss as well, about the where do you direct people towards? You direct them towards your website, that sort of default onto the messaging button that they have now. When your messaging button is switched on, means that you haven't got that button to your website. I think that's always a decision to make if you haven't made that one already. We've got another question. Oh, wonderful. We have to lean in a little bit because it's we've recently published a new white paper. Congratulations, Hutton. Should we promote it via the company page first, noting the company page reach is lower than personal as we're a startup?
I would always say for a startup, your network is going to be stronger than your company page, as you've said. I would post it on your profile and then reshare it or repost it on your company profile, because they may have subtly different followers and they may have subtly different areas to do. But when you reshare it on the company page, you can also then boost it. And that, again, you just may help people's interest in your company page because you're promoting something that's interesting. And again, that sort of educational, innovational, news type topic areas do really well on company pages.
Yeah, and just remember that the more people there are in your, the more pages you have, the more places you can put it out. And also a white paper's probably got a whole load of interesting facts, and a post can say a different thing every time. So you could be putting out a series of posts on every page, and it's not really where's the one place that I'm going to put that out. And there was the other question about being nervous. One thing that sometimes people are nervous about, rightly so, is their personal reputation as well. And you were telling me about an infamous.
Well, there's a growing number actually of this, and I think it's definitely a hot topic for us, but I'm sure for Pitch 121 it's more so. As you guys handle personal profiles, but I think we all have that slight nervousness about companies trying to tell us what we can and can't do on our personal LinkedIn. It's still part of our personal profile, and I don't want to be told by my company what I can and can't post. And I think that the reverse side to that argument by companies is yes, but because it is public facing, if you say something, then we're going to really have to take it into consideration if you say something that is against our brand values or could be perceived as a problem for our brand. And so that's the moment when it becomes something I would always recommend people look at it as it is public facing, and you are putting your brand and your company's name on your profile. So somewhere, yes, it's your private and personal space, and in another instance, you just leaned into saying, I'm connected to this company. So just be cautious about what you're saying. I think it's now 2013, actually. I think it might be a very old example, but the lady who boarded a plane who posted a tweet that was not a good idea, had basically lost her job by the time she landed. Now I know Twitter is a really different space to LinkedIn, but I would say even more so on LinkedIn. You have to be very cautious about what you're posting. I think most people would be hypersensitive to it, but it's still connected to a company and a company page, and therefore reputation management of a business increasingly includes the LinkedIn space, and I think brands are acutely aware of that now.
And it's quite a challenge to be brave to go out there with something that will make people think, perhaps make people think differently. I'm not saying to be controversial, but you don't want to be beige as well. And there's that balance, because it's the posts that I have thought, I don't know if I should put that out, that have performed the best and the ones that I've actually got better conversion points from. And I would just say there needs to be that thinking twice. For us, it's about QCing and diligence of approvals and making sure there's a good process in place. But I do think that it's very much, ask somebody. I'm thinking about doing a post like this, and it's just not. I'm thinking twice, and I'm wondering. More often than not, somebody will just give you the courage to go out there and do it. But it's, I think twice.
Yeah, I don't want people to be frightened about posting on their profiles for sure. But at the same time, it's kind of common sense stuff. But it has to be said nowadays. This is part of business consideration. Is what you're posting on social media may negatively impact the brand's perception and investor relations, and therefore you have to consider what you're putting out really carefully.
We've now got electric guitar.
I know we've added a guitar.
Okay, Kieran, strategy-wise, what would you recommend for marketers working on an SME?
It's a great question, but it's very broad. I think that get them started. This is a sales channel, and you can grow a business here for an SME. So consider it as that. And I think get them started. Make sure you're building that company page. Look at how they can promote their services and products sensitively. So it still needs to be done in an engaging way. It still needs to be considered with tone of voice and imagery and brand. But LinkedIn has provided a really interesting way of dovetailing in that brand page experience with people from your business. So you get that personal aspect and you get that brand aspect. And I think that's a really lovely difference to the other channels.
Yeah. And I think when you're an SME, you can feel the pressure that you need to produce loads of content to feed this machine.
Yeah.
And you probably need less than you think, because you always want to balance your own content with industry or trends or third-party content, and then there's the stuff you're doing, the behind-the-scenes stuff. So it does mean that I would concentrate more on quality of the content that you put out and repurposing that as many times as possible, than thinking that you need to create a new article every week in order to be active. Have we got another question there? No, we haven't. So organic and paid, Peter, is it an either or thing for you, or is it a blended thing? Or
certainly for company pages, I think it's blended, and increasingly so. You have to pay attention to what you're doing organically, but you have to complement it now with a certain level of spend. That doesn't have to be meta levels of spend to get good results, but it does need to still have some investment.
Right.
For sure.
Okay. And what are the commonalities from looking at the performance of organic versus paid, and sort of what anything to do with the kind of success metrics that might be useful for people?
So I think that we certainly have found over time that obviously there's the kind of the core three metrics, I suppose. So you've got your engagement, you've got your impressions, and these days I would say modern marketers would go followers is at the back. I'm not so sure how much that's a great metric. But for LinkedIn, I think followers is still an important process. That for brands, they need to start seeing that follower number grow so that they can reach the right number of people that they've got. Certainly if they're doing sort of, I would say, business growth and business development on that page, you do need to think about your follower numbers. So it really does depend on what you're trying to do at the time, but I would say that engagement is the one that you're trying to really get to the point where that's the most important metric for you, because that means you've hit a community rate that you're really interested in, and that you're making sure you're looking after them, and that you're giving them the type of entertainment and the type of content that's resonating with them.
And would you have an idea on when a company should start thinking about investing some kind of spend, even if it's not huge? Is there sort of a certain tipping point or a point in their business, apart from when it's a sales channel?
I think it not necessarily in terms of the scale of business, but certainly in the the stage that they're at and what growth they're trying to get out of that page.
Mm.
So certainly for SMEs, if you want to grow the page and you need that to become a sales channel, start investing in that sooner.
Yeah.
I think for that enterprise level business, I don't know that LinkedIn's going to leave it much longer for you to have a choice before you have to invest to get anywhere on LinkedIn. To get results that you're going to be interested in.
Yeah. So we'll take one more question if there are any more questions coming through. For us to sort of wrap up on this, there's a little bit of an outro coming once we if there's another question, please fire it through, because we've got a couple more minutes. But on that outro, we have a QR code through to the Voodoo website. What will people find when they go there? A little bit about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So, in fact, we've only just relaunched the website.
Okay, congratulations.
So I'm super proud of my team. They did a great job. It works and looks way better. But you'll find certainly sort of core areas that we look after. So that is marketing services, which we provide a range of stuff from LinkedIn, but also through to SEA, brand strategy, all sorts of types of areas. And then we also have e-commerce as another core function that we've done since we founded in 2001, where we've got technology, we've got helping you transition, certainly if you want to move to direct to customer and all those types of things, but also interim services. So if you need us to come and look after you for a little while, we also provide that, and actually it's a growth area for us.
I'm sure you'd be very happy to receive any incoming connections from anybody.
Absolutely. Feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to talk.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Presume there's no more questions? No, we're good. Thank you for your time, everybody, and thank you, Peter, for bringing us to the wonderful, noisy. But full of talented people.
Yes.
Here we are at Yamaha. So thanks for that.
No problem. Thank you.